Welcome back to Soulful and Sober. I'm really excited for today's guest. She is someone I actually met in Sober in the City, and she has a book out, and we'll talk all about the good stuff. But Meg, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thanks, Christy, for having me. I really appreciate you reaching out to me, and I'm excited to spend this time with you and your listeners. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I want to definitely talk about intuition and all the fun things that I know a lot of the listeners love. But I also want to talk about kind of how you got to writing a book and telling a little bit of your alcohol story. Cause I just think this it gives people so much like excitement when they hear how somebody was and how they are now and just all the amazing things they're doing by following their intuition.
Yes, yes. My book really starts up like the very early messages that we get early in childhood about alcohol. So, my parents ran in a country club scene, and so they were either going to a cocktail party or one was being hosted at our house. And so I saw my dad who worked all week. This was his time to kind of unwind and connect with his friends. My mom had three kids by herself basically all week. So it was same for her. And my mom would dress me up in my best Jessica McClintock dress, and I'm kind of dating myself now, and have me serve hors d'oeuvres to all these inebriated guests. And I saw this as a way, this is how you have fun, this is how you connect, this is how you relax. So that started very early for me, like in fifth grade. And so, high school and college were kind of when I could sneak it in high school and go to a party and probably like more of a binge type of drinking. Same for college. But then after college, I had two sexual assault traumas that happened to me, and one was in college and one was post college. And what happened was it thrusted me into this over functioning trauma response where I felt like I wasn't worthy, and so I started, like, having to prove my worth through my sales rankings, and I got into sales, and it was very much of this work hard, play hard type of atmosphere. If you weren't at the bar, it was frowned upon, and so, again, really encouraged to drink and, exhausted from trying to keep up with the Joneses. I had also, had a lot of student loans, and so I was doing some modeling gigs on the side, and I was literally the poster child for the alcohol industry. I was the Budweiser girl, the Jägermeister girl, and I was doing the shots at bars and objectifying my body in these outfits and just guzzling down the lies about alcohol. Fast forward to meeting my husband and us having two kids, I really fell into more intoxicating lies about alcohol with the mom and wine culture. So it became the way that I took care of myself. It was the permission slip to say this is hard with other moms. I bought the tea towels and the t-shirts. But the problem was when I didn't feel like a good mom after drinking and the towel would say behind every great mom is a bottle of wine. I'm like, but I don't feel like a great mom. I had lost my patience with my kids. I was, more exhausted and tired. And I was using wine really as something like a reward. And that's the lie that I hear. I have found that I was under the five most intoxicating lies. And I'm kind of skipping ahead. So I'll go back and I'll tell you what those lies are. But one of them, and the one that I hear the most from people when I talk to them, is I deserve a drink. Like I've earned it. I need it. It's my self care. And so I think that's the one that lures most people in. And it for sure did with me with the mommy wine culture. And alcohol is a slow, insidious kind of creeps up on you. And I was talking to my kids actually about this today. Like you may only drink, once a month, and then you get into college and it's every weekend. And then you get out of college and it becomes Wednesday or Thursday through Sunday. And then something really big happens in your life. And this is what happened to me where I had three back-to-back life issues that happened, and it shifted that recreational drinking to a medicinal use, where I started drinking every night to kind of cope with that stress, that anxiety, that overwhelm with these back-to-back life issues that were happening, and I talk all about it in the book, which is called Intoxicating Lies: One Woman's Journey to Freedom from Gray Area Drinking, and, what scared me was when I no longer wanted my kids to do sports in the evenings so that I could come home to my quote unquote rewarding glass of wine, that really scared me because I was like, wow, I am a person who likes to be in control, over functioning type A, got to have everything kind of planned out and done. And here's this was taking control of me. And so I finally worked up the courage to tell my therapist that I thought I had a drinking problem. And she was like, no, nope, I think you're thinking about it too much. And so her ill advice really kept my gray area of drinking going because she was the expert and I was just, the client that was wondering. And nobody ever said to me, you need to go get help. I never hit a rock bottom. In fact, when I would ask my friends and family, they would say, "You drink exactly like we do," So there wasn't any external consequences. But that little small voice inside, the intuition, that gentle whisper was saying, "Please, please explore this relationship with alcohol. It's not serving us." And I was becoming sick and tired of feeling sick and tired. And so I started, like everybody does, am I an alcoholic on the computer? And then I started getting the ads, and I got an ad for Sober Sis, which I looked at it for a couple months and I was like, the voice of the therapist, you don't have a problem. You drink just like we do. I had tried to start moderating, only drink on the weekends. I even told myself, "Oh, I'll just drink tequila instead of wine and that way I'll just sip on it and I won't drink as much." I'm like I told myself every kind of lie in the book to try to put that moderation guardrail up, which we know for most of us doesn't work. And it wasn't until I really listened to that inner knowing, to that intuition, and just said, the hell with what everybody else thinks and society is telling me and what those details are telling me. And I um, joined Sober Sis in November. I was November 1st of 2019. So Halloween was my last drinking night. And I knew I was starting this thing the next day. I didn't know what I was getting into, but I went all out on Halloween knowing it was going to be my last night. And so hungover on November 1st. I'll never forget it. And I thought I just needed to get some tools under my tool belt and go back to being a so-called normal drinker. I just figured I got this wrong. I couldn't figure it out. Something was wrong with me. And when I got into this group, there were thousands of women, and I was like, wait a second, why are there so many women in here? And then I found out about Jolene Park, who is the leading authority on gray area drinking, and watched her TED Talk. And I was like, oh my God, that is me. And once I could find myself on the alcohol use disorder spectrum, I felt seen. I felt like, okay, wait a second, there's help, there's something that can be done. Because before that, I was like reading quit lit books and there were these rock bottom, really devastating, tragic stories where I was like, well, I'm not that bad. And so it was keeping me stuck in this gray area of drinking. And I knew I wasn't the take it or leave it drinker on the one end of the spectrum. And I knew I wasn't in alcoholism where I needed a medical detox. But I didn't know that there was this whole space in between called gray area drinking. So I thought, I'll just read all the books there are on gray area drinking. And in 2019, I couldn't find one. And I was like, there are no books like telling somebody their story that what gray area drinking looks like. So that's why I wrote Intoxicating Lies, because particularly for women right after the pandemic, when we know, drinking took off and addiction went up 43% in women after that, I wanted a book out in the market right away that would help people in that gray area say, oh my gosh, that's me. I don't have to hit a rock bottom in order to have the permission slip to explore my relationship with alcohol. And that's how the book came to be. And it sold out the second day on Amazon. It was number 2 in alcoholism, which is a huge
Oh,
category. And I just
awesome.
was like blown away. And that just let me know that, there was a huge need for stories in this gray area drinking space. And so when women come to me and they say, there's a lot of books out in the market now. I'm like, no, get your story out there because not everyone's going to resonate with my story. And that's why I put my sober sisters stories in my book too. But we need all the different hues of gray, right? There's different hues. You might be a lighter shade of gray or you could be a darker shade of gray. And we need stories in every shade so that when someone reads it and they could say, "Ah, I quit for the health of it. I was a spontaneous, just didn't even really need to do a program. I just wanted to quit." That's my story. Or I just got a DUI, right? And I'm headed towards drinking all day long and, really numbing out. So we have everything in between too. And we need all of these stories so that we can see ourselves and say, it's okay to go and explore and get curious about your relationship with alcohol. And what happened was I was only going to do the 21 days. It turned into 60, then 60 turned into 90. Then I did an alcohol-free lifestyle program, which was 100 days. And in 100 days, things started shifting in my brain. And I started asking myself, like, why am I having Prosecco with my kale salad? Like, why am I having a carcinogen with my kale salad? Why
Mhm.
am I having a depressant to celebrate a wedding? Like things start, I was just reading all of the research on alcohol and it was like, wait, this is a carcinogen that is poison that's, hurting my body. Like, why am I doing this and working out and trying to feel better about myself and then just pouring this stuff that's causing my anxiety and depression to go through the roof? And quite frankly, when my kids told me that I had more patience, it was like, wow, like that was a huge, wake up call for me. And so I started asking myself, like, what was it giving me? Like, why do I want to go back to that? And the intuition and the inner knowing, I was starting to have a spiritual awakening. And I really talk about this at the end of the book. I was healing the trauma that happened with somatic therapy. So I was literally getting it out of my body. And at the same time, I started noticing angel numbers. I started connecting and doing the two-way prayer that Elizabeth Gilbert talks about, and I talk about it in my book. I was meditating. I was doing all kinds of things where I was filling my bucket up instead of numbing out and checking out. And life started showing up for me in this like rich, vibrant, soul fulfilling way. I started realizing what was in alignment for me, how to start manifesting what I wanted in my life. And I was like, wow, like all of this was just waiting for me. But we live in a society that is so obsessed with alcohol and tells you like at every minute, don't feel, just check out, just numb out. And it's an intoxicating lie because it just pushes it off to be dealt with later.
Oh my gosh, I love all this, and I resonate a lot with your story. So I was a gray area drinker, and my shades would be different hues during winter and summer.
Oh yeah.
We lived on a lake, so, for me, that was in the wintertime, it was a little bit better, and then I got worse, and, my drinking would kinda be ebb and flow. I wouldn't be someone that would be drinking every day. I didn't hit a rock bottom. I definitely did some embarrassing, awful things that are, a lot of us have done.
Yeah.
But the same thing happened to me a little bit different. So I remember Googling, am I an alcoholic? And, and I grew up with my dad was, he's sober now, but he was definitely like, more of the severe cases. And I just thought you had to be severe. You
Yeah.
have to
Me
be
too.
this bad
Yeah.
to quit drinking. I thought sober people were boring, and no one actually told me that. It was just how I perceived things in the world.
Mm.
And the whole mommy wine culture, I had like socks about wine. I had shirts that said, negative things about children and drinking wine, and I threw all that away.
My kids whine, so I whine. Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And then, my son was younger, and I'm so thankful that I'm sober so he can see that I don't need alcohol, and I don't really feel it yet. This is an age I'm not really sure. How old are your kids?
So my daughter is 18. She's getting ready to
Okay.
go to college in the fall, and my son is a freshman in high school. So, we're having conversations about vaping because there's THC now in the
Oh,
vapes,
I know
and
it's so
the
bad.
boys, yeah, the boys are really into vaping, and so we're having, and it's very similar, discussions. And so I feel really almost like it's like a gift that I went through this because I can completely like help them and guide them through what choices are going to be coming up, but more importantly, really ask them the questions to get curious about what they think it's providing for them. So if one of them drinks, I don't come down on them like, "Oh, you shouldn't have drank and it's poison."
Right,
I don't do that.
right,
I say,
yeah.
"Why did you drink so much?" And Well, of course, it's going to be social pressure, and this is what the kids are doing. Okay, okay, I get that. But why? Well, I was having some social anxiety. Okay, so let's talk about that. So you were having social anxiety. Why is it that you feel anxious when you get around other kids? Well, I don't feel like I can fit in, and okay, so this is about self worth. So, like, if you keep peeling it back, right? You keep getting to the bottom of really why we're using this. No one ever did this with me. I mean, it was like, just don't drink and drive and don't drink if you're pregnant
Right.
and
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Be
you
safe.
know,
That's it.
be
Yeah.
safe. And so, okay, so you have anxiety. Did you know that when you drink, you're actually making your anxiety worse? And my kids are like, no, because they're not getting that message either. These messages, unless you're in the sober community, really aren't being told or worn to our kids. And so, it's not even said that it's a carcinogen on the bottle yet. I don't think it will for a long time. There's too much money in it. But we as parents can have these conversations with our kids to get really curious. And I just say to them, look, I know I can't stop you from trying certain things, but I want you to always ask yourself, did this thing, whether it's vaping or alcohol, add to your life? Did it give something to you or did it take more away from you? When you threw up the whole next day because you were upset about the breakup with your girlfriend, did it solve the breakup with your girlfriend? No. You just had to deal with the breakup with your girlfriend a day later and you felt like crap. You know?
Oh, I love that. I love it. Yeah, yeah. It's the truth, and this is like very much indicative of your book. Eh, like this unprogramming, right? Because
Yeah.
we can't. Yes, we can't tell our kids to do things as they become adults, and I mean, even when they're not adults, sometimes they do things that are silly, right? Just
We tried things,
oh
yeah.
my gosh, yeah. I mean,
Yeah, they're gonna try things.
my son said something to me, and I mean, I don't feel like it's, like, the right time, and I'm with you, I would never shame anybody because a
Yeah,
lot of people I love drink, and that's their own journey, that's not my journey.
right.
He was like, "I'm gonna drink when I'm 21," and he'd also told me which I'm like, "Okay, well, at least it's legal age," and,
At least, yeah.
uh, and then he told me he's only gonna drink during special occasions, and that was, like, something that I'm like, "Wow,"
So
and
he's been programmed the only way you can
correct,
enjoy a special
correct, correct.
occasion is with alcohol, right? So we have to deprogram, yeah.
Yeah, so,
So
I
it's
mean,
really underneath that.
I'll probably end up I mean, I'll talk to him, about my journey at some point, and he knows I
Yeah.
don't drink.
He's young, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, he's not drinking right now. There's
Yeah, yeah,
no
yeah. Yeah, you're not I'm in the thick of the teens.
Yes, yes, we're not there yet. We're not there yet.
Yeah,
Plus, I wanna be very careful. Like, what you said is that I don't want him to think, "Oh, drinking people that drink are bad," right? Because like, one time he made
right,
a comment about people that smoke, and I'm like he said something about the person. I'm like, "Well, they're not a bad person because they smoke cigarettes."
right.
It's
Exactly,
it's
exactly, yeah.
so that's really interesting. But no, I love your story. And I think it's really important to share because a lot of people feel shame because they can't connect. Like, I feel like this is what I should not be doing. The other thing is that what were you thinking when you weren't drinking? I was thinking about eating healthy, doing the things like working out. And in some sense, I also tell people that's also your intuition because that's what you wanna be doing, you wanna be taking care of yourself, and those are just
Right.
values, the values you have, and drinking does not meet your values at the end of the day.
No, it doesn't. And I used to bike like 30 miles and then I remember there's a little bar at the end of the trail and I would go and drink afterwards like to reward myself for doing such a hard workout. Like it didn't even make sense. But like the nights that I would drink the night before, like you were saying, I would try to undo what I had
Mhm.
done. And by doing the hard bike or the hard workout, I was convincing myself, you don't have a problem. You just Meals, you don't have a problem. If you had a problem, you wouldn't even been able to get on the bike. This is stuff I used to tell myself. Like it
Yeah,
was
yep.
a
Oh, yeah, we talk ourselves out of
so it's
Yeah,
like I lie to ourselves,
yeah,
like, "Oh, I'm fine." Yeah, and we wanna put people in this black and white drinking box to, like, make our label them to make ourselves feel better, but that's not the truth. Most things are on a spectrum, sexuality, drinking, like,
right.
everything's on the spectrum, and so we just want these little boxes, and it's just not the way the world works. It's just not that we have to start talking about gray area drinking. And I'm trying to get like the media to pick up on it a little bit more because it still seems like it's that rock bottom kind of Matthew Perry,
Correct.
like lose it all and, almost lost everything or did lose it all. And I'm like, but what about all the people who aren't, right? And that's what I loved about Jolene Park's work was that it's mostly CEOs and high achieving people, executives, lawyers, doctors, even that are stuck in this gray area and can't seem to get out of it because they're not seeing it portrayed anywhere that it's okay to explore it.
Right. And, yeah, I 100% agree with you.
Yeah, and I just think, when I got into Sober Sis, I thought it would be me and 3 other women, and when I saw there were thousands of women in this organization, I was like, "What is happening to women?" Women are just, I think, in these intoxicating lies about their self-worth, about their
Mhm.
appearance. They beat themselves up. They're harder on themselves. They're exhausted with trying to work and motherhood or one or the other or both. And so they're looking for a place to just say, this is hard and I need to relax. And the only place in society that's saying this is okay to go do that is the mommy wine culture. It gives you the
Yeah,
permission slip to say and it's really bad messaging for our kids, like, "You're a burden." That's what it's saying, "You're a burden, so I gotta go drink." Like, no, women need
yeah,
support, they need rest, and they need community. That's what they need. They don't need alcohol, but that's what's pushed upon us, because the alcohol industry knows that they're vulnerable.
100%. And, gosh, Holly Whitaker talks about in her book about how the cigarette industry, how they preyed that on women because they're like, "Wait, we can make more money," then preyed on children. You know, do I believe that the alcohol industry is doing both? Yep, I do. Those
Yeah,
pretty shiny cans, and obviously we know about mommy wine culture, and even dad. Like, there's like a beer about for dads, like I forget what it's called, and then um, obviously there's tons of mommy wine culture stuff, apparel. It's a
yeah,
huge market, and I agree with you. Raise awareness, and the other thing too is that not all of us hit rock bottom, but, like, some people are gray area drinkers that go into more of a severity, right? So, why we don't wanna hit rock bottom. At the end of the
right.
day, no one wants to hit rock bottom.
No, we wanna catch
Yeah.
them upstream. Well,
Yeah,
let's catch them upstream, right? That's the whole point.
right, and then the other thing that, I think is really neat, especially with you and, s other people I've met in the sober spaces, is that once we get sober, we almost, like, I don't know, find more purpose or more
Yeah,
fulfillment. I know purpose could be flimsy. At the end of the day, more happiness, right? We want happiness from our hearts and to do what we're meant to do in this planet. And that is what a little bit of what I like to teach in the book I'm writing as well is that we all have a purpose in this life. We might have multiple purposes, right? Of course, raising children. Yet I also think alcohol dulls people to the point where we don't have time to like really think about like, are we happy? Are we doing what we want? Could we be doing more? You might be happy in your career with the person you're with, but maybe you're not. Or you could push further. Or, I also believe like a lot of people are out of alignment with what they want. And I feel like alcohol, even weekend drinkers, because I was a huge weekend drinker, you do weekend drinks, you're excited to drink, you're excited to like lay off steam, and then you do your life all over again
yeah.
and then
When
it's
you're
just like this
stuck,
rat
it's
race.
yes. And you have so much more energy. I had no idea how much bandwidth alcohol was taking. So there was the cost of it, the time, then there was the hangovers and the thinking about it and trying to moderate it. And it was just so all consuming in my brain. And you are writing a book or written books, and I've written my book, and we both have communities. I could never, and we have full time jobs. Like, I could never do all of the things that I
Mm-mm.
do now if I were drinking, and the thing is, it's not like I have to do them, I want to do them because they are so soul fulfilling, and like you said, I don't think I thought I was in alignment when I was drinking, but I wasn't. I was just kind of more people pleasing and pacifying, like, making it sure everybody was happy and, like, around me, and I, thought I was having a really good time, but when I stopped drinking I'd like to go out with my friends, don't get me wrong, but I really would rather have like a deep, meaningful conversation on a walk or go get coffee. I don't need the loud, blaring music and the
Yeah.
top gossipy surface conversation. It just doesn't appeal to me anymore. And I've done a lot of soul spiritual work and have realized that our purpose is to be like the light of the creator. And when we drink, we get a kind of a hit of that light, right? And that's what makes it addictive. And drugs does the same things. You get that high, right? And you get that quick kind of dopamine hit that feels like you're like the light that we want to all be like the creator. And behind it is empty energy. There's just nothing there, right? Then the hangover comes in. But when we have soul fulfilling purpose in our life with doing things that are in alignment and we're really, really happy with who we are and what we're doing and how we're serving and giving to others, we are being like the creator of the light. We are getting more light because we're coming from a place of giving versus taking. And that is our soul's purpose, is it that is it, right? Is like just to be in that place of like alcohol was dimming our lights because God puts this light within us, right? Or whatever it is that you believe, the divine, whatever. And that was dimming it. And all the creator wants for us is it for to shine as brightly as it can to express your God-given talents and abilities. And if you're drinking, you're dulling that light and you're going to the lowest frequency. And we all want to vibrate at a high frequency. You can't do that with a depressant, with a neurotoxin. It's like almost impossible. You can never be the best version of yourself.
No. I love this. I love what you said. I agree. Um, I think, some of us do have spiritual awakenings, and your spiritual awakening doesn't have to be super loud, right? I
Yeah.
tell people the thoughts of not drinking, that's all you need. That's all you need. And I love how you talk about intuition as well,
Yeah.
because I, you know, intuition, every obviously is such a hot topic, but it's so interesting to people. But I do believe that alcohol numbs your intuition, but also it
100%.
makes it so hard to connect because
Yeah.
for me, if I had a weekend of drinking, I sometimes would wake up on Monday, like, feeling inflamed, right? So I'm focusing on how shitty I feel, and then, okay, I'm gonna go I'd make myself work out. I start
Mhm.
all over again, and I start feeling better, obviously, you know, when I was younger, it was a little bit easier to bounce back, but it takes a little bit more for us as we get older. And I remember, like, midweek, I'd be like, "Okay, feeling good," and number 1, I was never really listening to, like, what I wanted. I didn't know what I wanted, to be honest with you. I had no freaking clue.
Yep.
Um, and then come the weekends, I was like, I'm so excited to drink with and it I loved my friends. I loved, I was not unhappy in my life, per se, but I was so excited to drink because my life not that my life was not exciting, but the growth part of me wasn't exciting. I wasn't doing anything. And, I remember a while ago my husband would shrink wrap and I was with my son and I'm like, I have like no hobbies besides working out. And I remember thinking like, "Oh, I couldn't wait till he would come home or hang out with somebody because like, I almost didn't know what to do with myself, and
Mm.
now, after sobriety, I'm telling you, sometimes we don't understand why we are led on this path, but after sobriety, obviously, some of the listeners know obviously, I've said I'm going through divorce, like, I wasn't predicting that. I also found the sober community, him writing a book and doing all this stuff, and it really has filled my cup, whereas I don't know if I would've done as well, you know what I mean? I mean, we can't go back and
Well, you're
predict
just kinda
things.
going along with the masses, right? You're just going to the bars or the parties, and you're just drinking. That's what you're doing. You're probably having surface type, not deep, meaningful
Yes.
conversations
Yes.
because you can't. You're slurring your words. You're, starting to talk loud. The music's loud. Like, it it just is what it is, and think I thought that that was really fun, and it was, like, when I was younger, but now I'm like, I just don't really even have the desire to go do that. Like, I wanna be with
Mm-mm.
my friends, but in a different capacity, and so, yeah, and it's just true, like, you get such in a rut of this detox to retox loop that Jen Couch of Sober Sis talks about, and it's so hard to get off that wheel when you're stuck in it as a gray area drinker and no one's telling you you need help, and there aren't any really external consequences happening, but it really is an epidemic, especially for women. And there are more gray area drinkers out there that are just wanting to hear messages like this from two gray area drinkers that are saying, I see you and I know how hard and maddening it is. You can get off the hamster wheel. You can have a richer, better life. You can have more presence and clarity and patience with your kids, with your husband, with loved ones. It's waiting for you, but, it's just hard in an alcohol obsessed society to do it.
It is, and one of the hardest things, and I think especially with gray area drinkers, is for me was how am I gonna socialize, like, vacation, and then just, like, the missing out, and I think this is why some people do need to get help in some capacity because if we've been I always tell people this, it's really hard to stop drinking, or at least not to have the thoughts about drinking, even if they're working on active sobriety, because you've been told for, like, ever that, like, it's a magical drug, right? It's a magical elixir. So for the longest time, if you've been told that for, like, what, 20 plus years, it's not gonna happen overnight. You're not gonna be like, "Oh,
Right.
yeah." So it took me, like, I wanna say, like, really a good year to be
Yeah.
like, "Okay, like, I don't miss drinking."
Yeah.
Took
I
me
think an
lots
early
of
sobriety is 1 to 2 years. I agree with you. I think it takes a while, and that's why those 30-day challenges are great to lure people in to be curious, but I think people wanna feel the magic within 30 days, and I'm like, "Oh god, no,
Mm-mm.
your brain takes a long time for your brain to heal." And you have to rewire it, right? With, like,
Yeah.
every time you think you want it, you have to say, "Do I want ethanol? Do I want gasoline? Do I want" you have to use the word carcinogen. "Do I want a neurotoxin? Do I want a depressant?" And if you think that it is a reward or a crutch, then you have some intoxicating lies still in your brain that's going to make you go reach for it whenever that comes up. And so you have to get really curious on, is it true? Is it really rewarding you, or is it really solving your problems as a crutch? And it really boils down to those two things. But I, in my book, had realized that I had believed the 5 most intoxicating lies about alcohol, and it's much to like what you said, and one of them in there is, "Will I be boring if I'm sober?" I
Mhm.
think that's the one. That is the lie that makes people go back to drinking the most, is that one, because they're just so scared to lose friends, and what we have to realize is that as we move up in our vibration in this world, and not from a hierarchy standpoint, but just in when we're more in alignment with what's in alignment for our lives, we're going to naturally lose some people
Yes.
that are no longer fitting for our lives, but we're going to attract new people that are vibrating at that same level where you're now vibrating. And that's a beautiful thing because they're elevating your consciousness and they're making you feel inspired and uplifted. And that's what you want to be around, not bringing you down,
Yeah.
and bringing you into the gossip.
Yeah, absolutely, and I also think that and this was hard for me, so when I stopped drinking, the 1st month was okay, it was actually the 2nd month where I started getting anxiety about vacation, like, 6 months in the future, like, "How am I gonna do this?" And then even when I decided eventually, when I decided to stay sober, it was still hard, and I think people forget growth is really uncomfortable. It's
Hmm.
quite uncomfortable, but you have to go through it. The other thing, though, is what you said is that it's not even the boring part, it's all the things you have to heal and work on, and then also if every single person around you drinks and you're, like, the only person, it particularly will feel awful probably sometimes, especially if they're drinking heavier amounts or they're binge drinking. And that's where, I think
That's why our community is
tricky.
so important.
Yep.
So you have to get into community so you don't feel alone,
And you get the
and
tools. Yeah, that people are
yes,
like,
to get the
"Yeah, I
tools and
did
the
this too, and this is what I did." And then you're like, "Oh, because I could, like, talk you off a ledge, honestly." Um, I remember after 6 months of not drinking, I drank again, and then convinced myself I was gonna moderate, which wasn't a good idea. Um,
mhm,
but I remember, like, getting anxiety about feeling pressured to drink, and I had nobody to talk to, absolutely nobody. I didn't
yeah,
get support at that time, and I do think I stayed sober because I did join a program that helped me.
yeah,
It wasn't the, AA, but it was a program that, again, you need, like you said, the neural pathways. You need to hear something over and over and over again, just like your book. If like if you you have to read that stuff over and over again and practice it.
And drinking amnesia is a real thing. I know I have a story in the book, and I call it a sidestep. So I drank after being alcohol free for 15 months. I had an effort moment and COVID, and and I'll just tell you the story. Caught my daughter vaping, and she had lied to me about it, and I was more upset about the lying than actually the vaping. Um, and I had been fighting with my husband about politics. I was trying to do my job online and COVID and just everything. I was fighting with my kids about they couldn't go anywhere with the COVID and I just felt like I was fighting for my sobriety. I was just done fighting. And I still had this one lurking belief that if the you know what hit the fan, I could always go back to wine. Like I don't know, I just still was lurking back there and I didn't even really kind of realize it was in my subconscious until that moment till I hit the wall. And I went downstairs and I poured myself a big glass of wine. I still had some alcohol in the house. I really didn't even, it didn't phase me. And my daughter came down the stairs with tears in her eyes and she said, Mommy, is this my fault? And it was like my
Oh,
why got slapped across my face. And I thought, here I am telling her not to do an addictive substance like vaping. Here I am doing an addictive substance. And so I had taken 3 sips, I poured the rest of the wine down the sink, and I said, "You know what? I'm not perfect, you're not perfect. We didn't make good choices, neither one of us did, and that's okay if we learn from
yeah,
them. If we learn from them, then we grow, you know? So we and she and I got so close from that moment, it was like one of those teaching moments for both of us, like, "Mommy's not
yeah,
perfect, and neither are you, and so what can we learn from this and how can we move forward?" And so, and she stopped vaping and, it was not an issue, and I quit. That was the last time I ever had a drink. And it was just a little sidestep. I never went back to the day 0 for me. I was like, "Nope, I actually learned something from that." So it was part of my growth in the journey, and so I kept counting my days from November 1st of 2019, but now I'm 5 over
yeah.
5 years, so but I actually appreciated that little sidestep. It actually pushed me further along in my journey.
Absolutely, and I think that's such a beautiful story because, we are our example for our children, and
Mhm,
we're not perfect, right? We
mm-mm,
screw up, we learn and we grow, and, funny story too is I'm over 2 years sober, and, it's been a hot second since I've done it, but one time I was like, "I wanna try just a sip of wine and see what it tastes like," and I agree with you, I wasn't like, I'm gonna count my days
right, I'm
in."
gonna start all over, yeah.
Because it smelled so bad, and I took a sip of it, and, um, it tastes awful. I was like,
Yeah.
"Weird." It was the weirdest thing, and I think that, like, I mean,
Your
for
body
me.
could tell it was a poison that it is.
Uh-huh. Well, I could taste the alcohol. Like, I'm
Yeah.
sure if I had a whole
Yep.
glass of wine, my palate would be, like, back to normal. I'd probably die of, like, puke or something, but, like, I'd get so sick. But, no, I was like, "That's so crazy." So, I'm just saying time is an essence and things can
Oh, for
change,
sure.
and I agree. I think everything's a life lesson. If
I
we
ordered a non-alcoholic drink recently at a bar, and, they gave me the real one, and I took a big swig of it, and this was just a year ago, so I was 4 years probably at that point, and I almost threw up at the bar. It was so disgusting to me. It burned going down. It was like you said, and my body was like, "Ew, what is this?" And it's so amazing how our bodies heal, right? Like they do. And the alarms were going off like, not this, not this.
Yeah, no, it is, and I think it's kinda cool though, because 'cause I'm like, "Wow, it's like when we were kids, like, it doesn't taste good anymore,"
Mhm.
and then but it so I won't tell the political leader because this is not about politics. I don't even know why this popped up, on my social media, Facebook, maybe because of the substance use, but there is a the it's our current president, like, no
Mhm.
politics
Mhm.
aside. Um, but I think the story I think was important. He was talking about how he never drank and his brother had an alcohol problem and he told him never to drink. And so he never missed out on alcohol. And
Mhm.
I I wish they would air those stories. So it's
Right.
like because that's important because when people see anybody that's like in public eye talking
Right.
about those stories, it's so important. But I think the bigger piece that like stuck with me is that like they never missed it because they never did it. And so
Mhm.
and so that's the thing is that when we start doing it and we learn that it does something for us, because that person was told over and over again, this isn't gonna be good for you. My life's ruined. So they looked viewed as alcohol as actually a bad thing, not a good
Yeah.
thing. And
Yeah.
just it was really interesting. But I don't like I said, please, anyone's listening, politics aside, this isn't about politics. I was like, "Really?" That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's true. We need to see more celebrities, and we are, right? We're seeing more and more celebrities and people in the public eye that are not drinking. And we need to, when my kids have somebody they look up to sees that it's a possibility, right? They're having a great life and they're able to still be having fun and successful and all the things. And I also want to say that the retraining of the mind, or rewiring of the mind is also in the emotional sobriety too. Like,
Mhm.
about your worthiness and about, holding space for yourself and intuition and all the things that come up of like trusting yourself and listening to that little girl inside, that inner knowing of what feels right for her. And when you start to be able to connect with that, you can't do that when you're drinking, like you were saying. You are able to find what's in alignment for you. You are able to tap into what your talents are and your gifts. And I've seen many women in my community come forward and do things like write books, start businesses, become a art teacher, that they've always wanted to do, like step into their dreams because their light was so dim, they never really saw that possibility for their life until they quit drinking and got into community where other women surrounded them, and this emotional sobriety where you have to retrain, like, you are
Yep.
worthy, you are enough, you are talented, you are, all the things, and you have to repeat those things too, right? After we get the alcohol out of the way, then the other work begins of like, why were you drinking in the first place? And how can we heal that little girl within, so that she can reclaim her voice and her power.
Yes, and I love that, and it's so true, and I always say, like, you can manifest when you're drinking, your intuition is still there when you're drinking, but is it dimmed? Are you manifesting actually the things you truly want? And I can say from my personal experience is, yeah, I didn't feel worthy, I people pleased,
Yeah.
and I think the other component is we think once we get sober, which you feel so much better, you are happier, but there's a part of people and personally me that I'm like, "Why doesn't this feel better?" And it was because I was doing things that were really hard and pushing myself and realizing I had a lot of limiting beliefs and I didn't believe in myself. And so those are the things that will come to light. And it's not that drinking made it better. It's easier to go back to that because it's what you know and what's familiar. And so sometimes those are the things that happen that it's also important to work with people to discover that. And like what you said, somatic practices, healing, and our childhood trauma sometimes can come rearing, like sexual assaults, all the things, that can feel very overwhelming. But as I said, these are the life lessons we're supposed to learn. The universe is telling you that this is what you're supposed to learn. And this is what gives us character. This is what helps us transform. Without that, we just can't do it.
Yep. We're here to grow and expand and allow more of that light in. And we can't do it until we learn those lessons. Like you said, it's not a punishing thing. It's there to grow and
Mm-mm.
expand you and allow more light come in so that you can shine even brighter.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I am so happy you're on, and I am going to put your book below because it's a beautiful book. There's so many wonderful lessons in it, and I encourage people to read it and get to know you a little bit. And I really appreciate you coming on. And where can people find you? I know we'll put it down below, but I always ask.
Oh, thanks, Chrissy. And I look forward to reading your book.
Oh, thank
Um,
you.
I can be found, because my last name is a mouthful, and so not everybody can spell it. So it's Geisewite. So I actually, you can put in meggeisewite.com, but I put it under Intoxicating Lies, .com. And that's where you can find out about my emotional sobriety community, about the book. You can get a personalized signed copy of the book off my website. Again, it's intoxicatinglies.com. And then on Instagram, it is all one word, Intoxicating Lies book. And those are probably the 2 places that I am on Facebook as well. Don't spend as much time there, but yeah, you can always DM me if you have any questions or send me an email through my website, and I'm here to support anybody and just rooting for your listeners on their journey as well.
Oh, well,
Thanks for
thank
having me.
you. Absolutely. Well, thanks everyone for listening.